I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Brian Wilson.
You know, it seems like every day we report on some metro meltdown, the single tracking, the smoke in the tunnels, and it's a dangerous situation. We've even had to have the thing shut down for a full day or so while they worked out some problems, people are getting frustrated by this. Chief among them is Congressman John Delaney, Democrat from the state of Maryland, who is on the line with us now to talk about an idea that he has that might change things. Good morning to you, Congressman.
Good morning.
All right,
nice
so you're right. Good. It's good to have you. Your idea has to do with how you populate members of the Metro Board, the WMAL board.
That's right. I mean, as you said in your opening comments, Metro is clearly a organization in crisis. We've seen an unfortunate death. We've seen public safety issues. Service is bad. Ridership is down. The finances are a mess. And there's been a lot of debate about what to do, whether we need better management or whether we need more financial resources. And while I think we probably need both of those things, I think we also need to take a serious look at how Metro's governed. Because ultimately, if an organization, whether it be a business or a nonprofit or whatever it is, goes as far off track as Metro has in terms of doing what it's supposed to do, you have to ask a question: who's been setting the strategy, who's been setting the priorities, who's been bringing on the management team, and who's been holding them accountable? And ultimately, that's the board. And the board of Metro is appointed by the four stakeholders. The federal government appoints four,
right.
Maryland appoints four, Virginia and D.C. And right now, there's no standards for who those people are, meaning there's no qualifications. They're not required to have any relevant experience in transit or operations or finance or safety. And my fear is that this is just, a lot of these positions are a lot of political payback.
Well,
what we should have on the board of the Metro, in my opinion, is people who know something about the job, know something about governance, and are either experts in transit, management, finance, or safety.
Well, I see that the Transportation Secretary has just nominated 3 people. Is this as a result of your legislation? One of them is a former vice chair of the NTSB, another guy who worked for the National Highway Transportation Safety Board, and the chief safety officer at the Federal Railroad Administration have all been nominated apparently by the Secretary of the Transportation. Is this a result of your legislation?
Yeah, I can't say it's directly a result. I mean, we started pushing this about 2 weeks ago, and now we're seeing this these steps from the Secretary of Transportation. But, I applaud these steps. And again, if you look at the resumes of the people that he's putting on the board, you say to yourself, okay, these people seem to know what they're doing. And that's what I'd like to see of every Metro board member. We applaud the Secretary for taking these kind of steps.
Yeah.
And now what has to happen is D.C., Virginia, and Maryland have to do the same thing.
Right.
Congressman, are these paid positions?
I don't think they're paid positions.
Okay. So because you said that you think some of these people get this job for political payback. It's like the equivalent of giving somebody the ambassadorship to Luxembourg once you become president. What benefit do people derive from being on this board? I would think it would not be a job I would want.
Yeah, Metro is an important enterprise here in the Washington region, and people, like to be engaged and do things in their community, particularly things that have prominence. So being on the board of Metro is something that you could see. Maybe you wouldn't want to do it, but
right.
You could see why a lot of people.
So it's like an influence power kind of thing. I got it. I just wanted to flesh that out a little bit. Well, here, and listen, I think this is I applaud you. I do think that this is a good move. I still have a big problem with how WMATA governs Metro in this case. You've got 4 jurisdictions: Virginia, Maryland, D.C., and the federal government. Each nominate 4 people. You're not saying, and those 4 people should be qualified specifically in this realm, which is a great idea. Where is the accountability, though? All 16 of these board members are not accountable directly to the voters. There is not one individual, even the general manager of WMATA, is not accountable to the voters. Usually in a city like New York, Chicago, San Francisco, when the metro system is terrible, the mayor takes the brunt. So therefore, the mayor of that city makes sure that Metro functions well. Otherwise, that mayor will not get reelected. Who is accountable to the voters on the WMATA board right now?
Well, ultimately, I think the elected officials in these various states are accountable because, or in the D.C. government, the mayor of D.C. appoints their members, the governor of Maryland ultimately appoints the members of Maryland's representative.
Yeah, but Congressman, they can always point and say, listen, our guys are doing a good job. It's those Virginia and Maryland people who are messing us up, or it's the Congress who's messing us up.
And that's an inherent flaw in Metro that's harder to fix, what you're identifying, which is it's shared by multiple jurisdictions. Right, and no one would tolerate just Virginia controlling Metro, or just Maryland controlling Metro, or just D.C. controlling Metro, because that wouldn't be fair to the taxpayers in those jurisdictions. So it is inherently a little tougher than in other places where the system is in one jurisdiction and the accountability is more clear, which is in many ways why it's so important to make sure that the people who are on the board understand governance, stewardship, and what their job is. I mean, there's a lot of best practices out there in boards. I've been on boards. I started 2 companies, took them public, was the chair of both of those boards. I was on the board of Georgetown University, which is a very high-performing institution. And you realize as you get experience on large, sophisticated boards that there is an approach, a best practices, I'll call it, about how to be a steward and a fiduciary, where you both think about whatever your interests may be. In the case of a corporation, people are often on the board because they're a large shareholder. But they also realize, and in this case, it's in a corporate context, it's under Delaware law, that you're required by law to be a fiduciary to the whole organization. So I think if we had people on the board of Metro who had more experience in that context, in other words, being on boards that are high functioning, that follow best practices, that take financial management seriously, that take governance seriously. I mean, if you look at the committees of Metro, they have a safety committee, they have a financial management committee, they have a customer services committee. I mean, what could those committees be doing, right? Because if you look at how this...
Well, when you look at the product, it doesn't look like they're doing anything. Well, listen, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Very quickly, do you think somebody needs to be fired? Because it seems like they're moving people around, but they're not firing anybody.
Well, listen, we have a new head of Metro, and I actually think he's qualified. He did a good job at BWI. He's only been in the seat for a relatively short period.
So you say give him a little time then, right?
You've got to give him a little time. Right. But again, management is central to an organization running properly, obviously. But at the center of the center is, to some extent, governance. In other words, who are the people who are setting the strategic direction, recruiting the management team, and then holding them accountable. And so I worry that even if we have a good manager, if we have a dysfunctional board that's not setting the right priorities, not holding management accountable, you'll get the same kind of result.
I got to leave it right there, Congressman. We're all out of time, but thank you so much for joining us here this morning.
Always good to have you.